I'm pretty excited today because it's my first talk in front of such a big audience, and in the end, after several years of attendee here at PyCon, is my first talk. So please forgive me, especially because I will cough. It's turned out to be not to be a good idea to have a cold before a talk, but okay. So my name is Gianluca Romanin, and today we are going to flip things a little bit around, talking about Backend-First. And before starting, I would like to explain a little bit more who I am and where I come from. Only a question, how many of you know what an ARIC is? Please, hands up. Okay, nobody. Yeah, I was expecting this. Sorry. An ARIC, yes, it isn't the guy from the DevOps team, and not even a new Python package. ARIC is the Europe way of saying let's do science hard together, because in the end it stands for European Research Infrastructure Consortium. And is the way that Europe had to foster research in the last years. So currently there are about 32 ARICs in Europe, each one focusing in a specific sector. And I work for ARIC, which is a distributed research infrastructure consortium of of 8 countries and about 60 instruments, which are all focused on material science, biomaterial, or nanotechnology. So you can think of it like an Avenger-style alliance of research instruments, but instead of saving the world, we are analyzing materials with scary precision. So my background is a software engineer and technical manager. Currently, I'm working as a software architect and technical leader in ARIC on the proposal management system of ARIC. So if you are pretty curious about it, please check the website aric-aric.eu or just talk to me and my colleague Emiliano, which is something around. So what we are going to do today, so we are going to have a path from 0 to hero on the HTMX. There have been already a couple of talks on this in this PyCon, so no pressure on me. So there is a pretty old joke, and I want to ask you how many of you started a web development project in their career as a personal side project, for example, on static site generator, web library, hands up. Yeah, there is a joke telling that it's not a matter if, but just when a developer will start a web project. So I asked to ChatGPT to generate a couple of images, and it turned out to be wonderful, inventing some new names for your next web framework, like Angular, Flago, and Django and Rails. Yeah, because in the end, a lot of this project, of this personal project, became in the past big things. So, for example, Python in the 1991, PHP, JavaScript are big things for languages, but like Django framework, the first public release was in the 2K5, and then React, Angular. Finishing in the 2020 with HTMX. Just to have an idea, ChatGPT, the first really useful model was ChatGPT probably 3, was released on the late 2022, and it seems like dinosaurs today already. So I will have a couple of words on that, because in the end, if you are worried about ChatGPT stealing your job, like me, for example, so be positive and stay strong, because in the end the forecasts are not so well done. And okay, in the software, in the world, there have been already different kind of revolution changing the jobs landscape. So for example, we still are talking about mathematicians, tailors, and so on. So there will still be the need of software engineers in the future, maybe not so in the same way that today we are talking about, but okay. So leaving apart the jokes, a little bit of background of HTMX, looking at the GitHub stars diagram, you can see that HTMX is currently something very well established, like, for example, Vue.js, not the same as React, but we are there is a pretty steep curve, and it is a thing. So what is HTMX? It has been created by Carson Gross, which is a principal tech engineer at Big Sky Software, which is also the author of Intercooler.js, which is the parent of HTMX. So it is a minimalist JavaScript library, is about 14 kilobytes today. It extends HTML with new attributes to do something like AJAX request, WebSocket, and with some extensions, something more like server center events. If you are curious about the extensions, please check the web URL on the slide. I will give you the slide at the end of this talk. And why using HTMX? So ironically, the best JavaScript library might be the one that lets you avoid writing JavaScript, because you know JavaScript tends to be a little bit awkward sometimes. And I can tell you that HTMX is easier than explain a closure to a product owner. So, okay, HTMX is not about removing JavaScript from your stack, but to enhance or reduce the amount of code spread all over in a mess. So it is simplify UI management and adds reactivity to your interfaces without using other front-end libraries. And it's perfect for server-side rendering. So I don't know if you know something about ThoughtWorks Technology Radar. It is a report released every 6 months, and it's a big thing to look about, to understand the future of the technologies. And HTMX was inserted in the 2023, while server-side UI in the 2022 as a technology to assess. So how does it work? HTMX extends HTML, adding new attributes to your tags. Like, for example, we can see hxGet, hxPost, which defines the URL to call with an AJAX request. hxTrigger, we specify the trigger event, or hxTarget, we specify the element of DOM to be swapped, and hxSwap, that defines the swap behavior. So in the end, a boring element like a div knows HTTP verbs in the end. So this is the diagram of the flow that you can have with the technology. Basically, the user interacts with an element of the page. HTMX captures the events and sends a request to the server. So you can see the request on the right side of the slide. And in the end, the HTML fragment from the server is captured by the HTML JavaScript library and is swapped in the DOM in the specified target with the specified swap behavior. So in the end, HTML is building your page just in time with little requests, one step at a time, swapping the little parts of HTML and adding that to your web page. So a couple of words on a little bit of philosophy. I mean, this is a screenshot of a blog post of Carson Gross talking about locality of behavior. I think it was probably in the 1990s when Richard Gabriel, which is the author of Worse is Better, introduced the concept of locality of behavior. Richard Hickey, which is the author of the closure language, enhanced the concept of the overhead of scattered code. So there is also a wonderful talk of Alex Martelli cited yesterday by himself, speaking about the concept of principle of good enough, the right thing, worse is better, and so Richard Gabriel and a lot of other amenities that every developer should know. So take a look. It was EuroPython 2013, and I was here, so I'm pretty old. So Loeb tells that the behavior of a unit of code should be as obvious as possible only by looking at that unit of code. So Loeb is about keeping your behavior close to your markup. So for example, like at a good pizza, everything on a slice. And okay, is somewhat conflicting sometimes with other concepts like don't repeat yourself or separation of concept, but in the end, experience for a software engineer is about making some trade-offs and understand when to apply or not a thing, because, for example, sometimes separation of concern just means harder to debug. So just to understand a little bit the approach, this is a little example coming from the documentation of HTMX. So on the top part of the slide, you can see that the implementation of the AJAX request of the click, and it is a single line. It's pretty simple. On the bottom side, there is the implementation of the jQuery thing. So one part for the JavaScript file, one part for the markup. It is a stupid example, but it makes the point, in my opinion. So how to add HTMX in Django? Adding HTMX to Django is easier than explain a thing to a project manager in the end. So it's really easy. You can add it by using a manual approach, linking the script by yourself, or I suggest to use the Django HTMX add-on of Adam Johnson, which is the author of several books, which is very well established. In the end, it's just adding the app to your installed app in your Django settings, and optionally the middleware. We will speak about that in the next slides. And on the right side, in the bottom right side of the slide, you can see the Django main template, where we are loading the tags, we are putting the HTMX script tags and the HX header, which is important because the Django itself is checking for security the CSRF token. Okay. So a simple example. This is pretty stupid. Just a couple of views on the top left, just a routing on the bottom left, and the template on the right side. You can see the same pattern that I showed before for the HTMX installation. Basically, we are adding a name and swapping with a form and swapping the content of the fragment returned by the greet view in the response div. So there is a div on the right side which have the ed response. Just to understand a little bit more, there is a video about it. So for example, adding the name and swapping the content. And you can see on the left side the logs of the web server. So it's easier also to debug. A more complex example. So we'll leave apart the user experience questions for the moment. We are dealing with a proposal of some researcher. He is asking for some instruments, and in each instrument, he wants to bring its own samples of materials. So he should specify the samples. This is the screenshot of the page. So you can see the blue button, which is the one that it's opening a model, and on a model we will call different kind of sections of our backend, changing the content with HTMX calls. So we are using a model admin class, basically an inline model admin de facto in the change form, and the idea is to add some field method, so an arbitrary method used as a field to inject the button with a model in a table, so the blue button. We can see the video of this. So clicking the button, opening the model. In the model there is another section. In this section we can view a sample, modify a sample, which is pretty complex also. Go back, delete the sample, cancel or add a new sample. And going back, being on the same page. So we are using a bootstrap model and standard model admin. A lot of Django developers prefer to develop their own views to do something like an admin portal, but in the end you should notice that the model admin class of Django is already the 90% of what you need, because it's implementing a lot of things like the basic crude views, but also the permission management. For example, you can have the change list view, which is the list of all your model instances. And in that page, you have also the filtering, you have the paging already are coded by the framework itself, and the change form, add the change a model instance, or the delete form to delete an instance. So it's pretty useful and completely customizable by the user, by the developer, sorry. In this slide, you can see also the sample description admin class, that manages all the samples related to an instrument usage. It is the one loaded in the model, the content loaded in a model, and you can see also the field method, which is substance underscore view underscore link, which injects a little bit of HTML with the HTMX attribute. So you can see the HX get, the HX target, which is the modal body of the Bootstrap model, the swap behavior, and the trigger, which is the click, basically. So a couple of words also on the hosting code. So the one with the blue button, for example, it is injected with another field method. I used, for this example, the Django rendering engine, which renders the template specified here. And on the right side, you can see the template. You can see the blue button, which is the button element, and the model underneath. So, by using this trick, we can open a model and use a standard model admin class in that model. In this way, we are using the basic views of the model admin with some customization to render as a fragment, because in the end, we don't need something like the sidebars, headers, CSS, JavaScript, and so on, because we are looking for the content inside the model. However, with the HTMX middleware, you can see on the right side the official documentation of the middleware. We can manage to have in the same URL two different behaviors, so loading the full page or the fragment partial. You can see that the HTMX middleware will add an attribute to your request to understand what kind of request is. And for example, in this example, you can see also a couple of other decorators used to manage the cache of Django. I never had some issues with the cache of Django, but if you have some issues, you can rely on the very own decorator or the cache control decorator. So, how does this simplify the state management? So, first of all, no client-side state. So we are avoiding complex stores like Redux, Vuex, and context cell at all. So, amen. We are keeping the logic on the backend, so which is easier to debug. The HTML is the main source of truth. So you can use the Django logs to understand what happens, for example, and we avoid the duplication between front end and backend. A couple of words on performances. We are talking about quantitative and subjective performances, no benchmark. However, we can say that in the average, the traditional way of working, so standard HTML or single page application, is lighter on the responses because usually you use some kind of data protocol like JSON, but there will be a lot more requests to build the page, and the client load will be higher, while the server load will be lower. It will be the right opposite with HTMX, because we are serving HTML, but the number of requests will be lower. So when to use it? If you have only static content and minimal or no interactivity, and the standard HTML is enough for you. If you need some reactivity on your pages, try server-driven UI first, because in the end you avoid a lot of complexity, so the JavaScript will be simpler. And okay, if you have to deal with some trade-offs, for example, we are all full-stack developers, and it will be difficult to have a front-end developer in the team to hire someone. HTMX is the technology for you. But if you have to deal with highly dynamic real-time apps, probably a single-page application is the right choice, because also if you have some kind of mobile app that should handle also the offline behavior, HTMX is not for you because you always need a server online. So we can say start with HTML, add HTMX when needed, and if this is not enough, go also for single page application framework. But if you have any problem, okay, you have to solve some JavaScript spaghetti code. Okay, so HTMX is a very zen and simple technology, avoiding a lot of complexity, and in the end, nothing more than that. But I want to add some bonus content because in the end, I know that is quite easy today to ask to ChatGPT and Stack Overflow, but in the end, the documentation of HTMX is really, really good and to the target, so take a look. For example, there is a quietly very, very documented integration with side technologies for HTML like CSS. And this is an example coming from the documentation. For example, you can apply some CSS animation on the swap behavior, maybe fade out, fade in, like it is shown in this slide. And for example, there is the hx_on attribute, which extends the on-event property of HTML. Usually, it's available for few elements and a very limited amount of events, basically only the click. On the bottom side of this slide, you can see that we are mapping 2 events to trigger some alerts. hx_on extend the generalized mechanism for responding to arbitrary events on all the elements. So a more complex example of this comes from our code base. For example, we integrated a React web component in a Django tabular inline. Yes, you can mix React, Django, and HTMX. Yeah, you have to stay calm to do that. Okay, but we avoided the spreading of additional files here and there just to load the component and match the workflow. So we can see that on the form field for DB field event, when the DB field is built, we are adding the HTMX attributes to have a get, a trigger, and to map 2 events that call the web component JavaScript, a couple of functions to match the workload. And we used also the hx params and hx vals, which are 2 different attributes. The params allow us to filter out the parameters passed to the AJAX event, while the vals allow us to transform and add values passed to the AJAX request. Another bonus is response headers. So, for example, we have the capability of handling the response header on the HTMX partial response. We can change the behavior of the client, customizing the headers. For example, on the left side, you can see the redirect of the client or the full refresh of the page. On the right side, you can see a definition coming from the official documentation of the headers that you can handle. And there is also hx trigger, which is useful if you want to trigger some specific JavaScript event, on the response of your partial. And that's all. A couple of final notes. You can connect with me via LinkedIn. On the right side, you can see the QR code, and you can download all the material on the left side. Just a suggestion, don't let friend over-engineer the front ends. So that's all for me.
Thank you, Gianluca. At the end, it worked. So thanks a lot. It was very interesting. I remember to you, if you want to ask for a question, you can use Slido. And at the moment, there is no question, but I have one. So the most famous recording on the DjangoCon YouTube channel is about a talk from the transition to a very highly dynamic website in React, translated in Django and HTMX, and it's very interesting. And would you suggest some other resources apart from the official documentation that maybe helped you to study HTMX, article, video, or some?
Well, I find useful a lot the blog of Carson Gross, because usually it explains also the architectural decisions to implement HTMX. But in the end, the official documentation is enough. I suggest also to check other side technologies like Alpine.js, which has a really, really similar philosophy, because it's a matter of philosophy in the end. So it extends the attributes. So usually a lot of HTMX users usually include also Alpine.js.
Okay, thank you. If there is no question, I think we can thanks again, Gianluca, and give you another applause.